I appreciate everyone's leniency and flexibility on the day. When I got the message, I'm like, I'm on a bus on the way to the airport.
You got an email, so I reassured him that this is really just getting his side of the story, so he's a lot more relieved after we spoke, so I'm glad you stopped by. And really, this is really fact-finding because I've got, one side of the story, and I know I've shared with Carol and Dean and the Senate officer there knew a little bit last year just because of being in that capacity, but really would like to just kind of hear your side of the story and tell us a little bit about the details of the student event and then we'll have a discussion. That's all.
Not a problem at all. Before I go into the details with the specific case with this course, to contextualize that week when this came up in the course, it was when a number of different things were coming up in the media with the case with Barlow Davenport, and it was very much only one side of this. I realized the administration was tied in what they could or couldn't say publicly at the time, but there was only one side of the story coming out. And Aaron actually ran into me that week. I came in, I talked with Will, I talked with Bill. She took me over to talk with Dell because as there wasn't communication going forward, all sorts of crazy rumors and anxiety were flying around, and there were stories about secret hidden files on faculty and all these things. It was just a very incredibly anxious week. What had occurred that helped to set off this particular scenario was, well, I've got three different documents here that I'd like to share. One is a document that I read to my class, one is a document that I made available to my class, and one is a copy of an email that I sent to my students on the same day that I had initially given the assignment. What had occurred, the third document that I have here is a statement from one of the students who had been in Barlow's class. What the particular context is on this is I'm not sure who this belongs to, but this was anonymously getting slipped under faculty doors around campus as stories were going around about what was going on with Barlow. Some anonymous student claiming that they had been part of the investigation and trying to get their side of the story out there.
Was this blocked out when it's put under your door?
No, it was not blocked out when it put under the door. I had a copy of it that I had gotten probably about an hour before class that day. I had read through it and I was like, okay. When I got to class that day, I had no intention of talking about anything with the Barlow case. It had not been the intention at all. We were preparing for our midterm exam, and it was going to be a review session that day. I happened to have a copy of this with me where I had already blacked out the names because there was a couple of people that I wanted to show it to. Had not intended on showing it to students, but just in terms of and number one, I didn't know who had distributed this. Number two, I didn't want any of the details to cause issues for anyone. So I had blocked this out. When I came into class, students were openly discussing the Barlow case and saying, "Oh, did you read that latest piece in the Independent or the Spectrum or whatever?" And we got talking about it, and one of the major things I emphasize in any of my history courses is that historians are very similar to both lawyers and journalists. They go out there, they look for a multiplicity of sources, they try and put things together, and that's much of what we focus on is multiple primary documents. As students talked about it, I said, part of the issue that we're dealing with right now, as I said, we only have one side of the story that's out there right now. I said, I've been given other things that support that one side of the story. I said, but we really have no idea exactly what's going on. And students are like, well, I wish we could know more and this and that. And very, very, looking back on it, a very stupid move at the time. I said, well, perhaps we could have an alternative assignment for the midterm exam. And I said, for those of you who feel comfortable with what we've prepped up for already, you can do the traditional midterm. For those of you who would be interested in going out there and exercising your sort of ability as a democratic citizen, part of this institution, but also sort of fact-finding, looking for different documents, I said, If you want to spend the next few days going around and talking with people and seeing if people are available for interviews and seeing if you can gather more information and you'd like to write a report on that, that would be an appropriate alternative assignment. I did not require it of students, I just offered it as a possibility. The only document that I provided for my students was the letter that was written by Varlo's brother-in-law. They had been, I think it was published in the Spectrum and again published all over online, and most of the students had already seen this letter, so they had a number of questions. I did read this statement out loud in class with all the names blacked out, not realizing at the time anything. Well, number one, any thoughts of FERPA, it didn't cross my mind, and I didn't even think that there might be any problems for the fact that I didn't use any names. Looking back on it, how do I lay this out? Once class was done, about 4 hours after class got done that day, Vice President Christensen called me at home and said that a student had come to talk to him. He asked for details about the assignment. I explained it to him, and he said, can we just take a moment to pause and think about what you've just done, Joel? I'm like, yeah, I gave an interesting sort of journalistic assignment. And he said, no, you may have potentially set out a group of students on a fact-finding information where they don't know what's going on. He said, there's still criminal aspects potentially going on. He said, well, I understand that your intent was nothing malicious. He said, this assignment's a very bad idea. As he talked through, I'm like, oh, yes, this assignment is a very bad idea. Bill and I spoke on the phone for about 15 minutes. It was incredibly cordial and constructive. And immediately after getting off the phone with Bill, the email that's in the front of this packet is an email that I drafted to my students that I sent off immediately, stating that after reflecting on things that I didn't feel it was a responsible assignment. I apologized to them, and then used it as an ability to talk about the communication and clarity are important things. And yeah, it was something that was, let me put it this way, one of the discussions that Bill and I had prior to this is I had gone to Bill pretty much in the midst of a panic attack and saying to Bill, saying, have you done a Google search on the word Dixie in the last few days? And he was like, no. I'm like, if you do, I said, the story is out there, and Varlo is completely controlling the story right now and how people are seeing it, how people are perceiving it. I said, well, are you guys going to make some type of statement to offset this? And he's like, well, eventually we'll get around to it. And I was just very panicked about it because whether it was within the student population or the larger national population of, the Google spreads information very, very quickly, and it bothered me that there was only one side out there. So there was no intent of doing anything disruptive for any students. There was no attempt of anything malicious towards the institution. It was just saying, okay, well, the administration says that they can't tell a side of the story right now. If you guys can find more information and tell the other side on social network, whatever. I said I think it's important for the institution and the culture of the institution that that there's not just one side of the story out there right now. And
how would you linking that to your history class? I know you said the students were proposing that it be an alternative exam.
Yeah.
As a professor controlling the content, what was the justification of allowing them to want to do that, and how is it tying into
for their procedure, with that course, what we do is I actually have two different textbooks that we use. One is a very left-wing liberal interpretation of U.S. history, the other was a very conservative interpretation. So we spend the entire semester comparing documents and looking at, okay, if you only tell one side of the story or if you omit part of the story, how does that make the story change? And in terms of application of skill set that we work on every single day in that class, it was taking those same skills that we utilize and we're trying to refine all the time and just a different topic and subject. So That was the rationalization for it at the time.
I don't have to be the only one to ask questions, so.
I have a question. When did you receive this letter from the student?
That was about an hour before my course that day. Somebody had gone through and anonymously slipped them under faculty door over on
Was
campus.
this in November or?
No, I received this on March 3rd, the same day that I gave the assignment in my class.
And so you said you received it and then you read it aloud in your class?
I read it in my office, and as I was reading it, there was a couple of faculty members I wanted to share this with, so I went through and I blacked out the names. I happened to have it with me when I went to class. I didn't bring it with me intending to share it with my students. It was just in my satchel, and students were talking about the issue. And yeah, it's,
You read it aloud in
and
on March 3rd, is that what you said?
yes.
But so the class assignment, the discussion in class, and then Bill's conversation with you, and then this email all happened on the 3rd of March.
Yes, over about from the time that I got the document slipped under my door to the time that I canceled the assignment, there was maybe an 8-hour period total.
Yeah, the class was on the 2nd, this all happened on the 3rd. Bill called in that night, right?
Okay. Well, I believe March 3rd it's a Tuesday, Thursday class. I believe March 3rd is Tuesday.
Can you tweet from the document here? This Tuesday, March 3rd?
Yes, the course runs from, it's 10:30 to noon. So yeah, I found this under my door in the morning. I read it while I was preparing for class. It came up in class, and then yeah, it was about 5 hours after class that Bill called me and that we talked, and then I drafted something.
And Bill found out about this by a student?
Yes, a student came and talked with him.
The student that came in had this, but didn't have the names blocked out. Was there any glitch with posting it to Canvas or anything like that? I think this one didn't have them blocked out either.
Right. I'll say that I did not distribute copies with the name without names blocked out. Well, I didn't distribute copies at all, but there were copies of this all around campus that day.
Okay.
Yeah, but was it your Canvas course?
No, it was not in my campus.
I think we have it saved where it was. I can double check the previous information. When this came, they took a snapshot of your Canvas and found the documents that were on there. I can double check.
I know that the letter I put up there.
So the one, this one here from
Right.
Ryan Benson.
Right. Let me put it this way. If somehow this other letter was up there on Canvas, that was absolutely unintentional. I had no intent of putting that up on campus for distribution. It's a number of months ago, so I'm trying to recall the details of things, but no, something like that I would not intentionally put up on campus. And that's what, with Canvas, I have to admit, I am technologically disabled. When I go to upload things, I'm like drag, drop. So.
Oh, but to do so, you would have to scan it and then put it up on Canvas, right? I mean, you didn't have the original document sent.
Before I blacked out, I had scanned a copy and I had it on file.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that may have happened and that you posted it on
Right.
Canvas
And if it was up there.
which would have taken some work. So you did scan it?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Without the names blocked.
Right. And that was actually the main reason why I scanned it, particularly without the names blocked. The couple of faculty members I wanted to share it with, I wanted to show it them with the names blocked. But in terms of any protection for myself, perhaps, I was just trying to cover. I didn't realize the full ramifications of what might come with this, but I also realized, okay, this is weird things going on. So, yeah.
Yeah,
No, if you guys have a screenshot of that, I will. That's not something that I'll dispute. Yeah.
Well, help me understand a little bit, Joel, what your goal was. What was your hope again? Explain it to me.
my goal and hope at the time was, it's difficult to gauge at that time the amount of anxiety that was within faculty at the time, and that was also within students, because everything was getting based upon, number one, just one side of the story coming out, but also just sort of crazy rumors and things. And that's where Erin can attest to how I was panicking at the time. She caught me in the middle of a panic attack while I was walking across campus and went and sat me down in Dell's office and assured me that there are no secret files on people. And my intent on it was hoping that if administration was not able to come forward at that time, because the number of statements at the time kept saying that, we can't provide any further information at this time. It was more for within the students to, if they could talk around and find information that would balance it out, to have that conversation within the student body. Because within students there was this great paranoia, like, what, a professor just randomly getting fired? What's going on here? And that was the discourse within faculty at the time.
So this letter from Varlo's brother-in-law,
Yes.
you did share with the class?
Yes, that I had a copy of.
Okay.
And
Which
that,
is very one-sided?
yes.
One-sided,
Yes.
okay. Did you share anything kind of the other side?
I didn't have anything to share at the time. And that was the point of the assignment, was for them to see if they could find the other side of the story and, write about it, talk about it with other students.
When was this shared in class? Such a condensed amount of time. When did Brian have time to write during that?
This was something that that Varlo's brother-in-law had published about a week before that. There was I think it was editorial in the Spectrum, and also had been posted all over Facebook.
Okay, it just doesn't have a date.
Yeah, you could access this on Facebook. A number of faculty shared a link to this letter.
Yeah.
Or something very much like it. I honestly don't remember the text of what I looked at.
Like February or something. Sorry, I'm a date person.
No, that's
Okay,
We could probably find it on Facebook.
it's all right. So this was already available before?
Yes,
you
yes.
started.
Can you share with me why your anxiety, I mean, Barlow had nothing to do with you, can you just kind of take me to why you felt so anxious and so worried? Personally, I mean, this really had nothing to do with you or your department.
Yes and no. It's number one, as somebody who is not from Utah and who is also not LDS, is a little bit of an eccentric individual. My first couple of years here were incredibly rough, and I felt persecuted and alienated almost constantly within the campus, within the larger community. And so there was a certain anxiety level with that. The other aspect is, prior to me coming to Utah, I taught in Michigan, which is very much a very, very strong union state when it comes to the university system. So in terms of my anxiety on that was that, as a faculty member who had not yet achieved tenure and who does not have a union rep per se, and that was a common feeling amongst faculty throughout the time during that period I talked to, saying if we had a union, if nothing else, we'd at least know what on earth was going on. And so, it was, I moved 2,000 miles away from my home and family to come here and to work, and I love my job, I love this community, but it took a while, and the idea that could be taken away without having union backup or protection for any of us, I think all faculty felt great anxiety.
Well, I appreciate you being very open and honest with us and kind of tell your side of the story. One side, I don't know if Bill shared with you, is Cassidy at the time had left the institution due to bullying and harassment from other faculty and students. And when this happened, although you took it down very quickly, having worked with her parents, and her parents contacted us, it got to the point that the bullying harassment was so strong, people on her Facebook and other social media, that her parents, they had to take it away. And she did enter into therapy, and there was some serious consequences of that. At the time, her parents had issued a suit to the school, and so part of my obligation is anytime the institution is sued, I have to share with that the Board of Trustees. Because this came up, the Board of Trustees are aware of this situation too, and then when I had updated them on this situation. We're kind of in a sticky situation because this behavior can seem as, supporting bullying or encouraging bullying and harassment. And I know that you didn't know this, but she's also biracial, and that could have, some people could make, conclusions on that. Although I'll tell you, I don't think that you had any intentions or malicious intentions from your explanation, but there were really serious consequences from.
But were my students involved in that? I understand that there was bullying and different things involved, but the bullying that happened, is that a consequence? Is that something coming from my students?
From this class, people were saying that we have an assignment, we need to contact you, and we're saying, and they weren't, some of them weren't nice.
Okay.
And so, yes, it was a direct consequence of the class, although I'm sure it wasn't exclusive. I'm sure there was other people that were from other professors, because it had been occurring, and she did leave campus because of the bullying and harassment. I mean, there was a group of students that were focused on getting Barlow reinstated, and were doing things to her that were not appropriate. So to say it was only your students, I can't say that, but your students did engage her. And the parents called me and said, what is going on? Somebody gave an assignment, and so they know.
Okay. Well, my question with that on the time frame, because this assignment came forward and then within a number of hours was revoked. I mean, do we have names of students who engaged in those things?
They did not give those
Okay.
to me, but the conclusion of this came from a professor that's assigned a midterm, and we're trying to find you where you at.
I would like to say I never once encouraged my students. I did not give names, and I did not encourage my students to try and contact this individual.
But if they had the document with her name on it.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty easy to find if you have the.
Okay. It was the person's first name is on that document, but no, I'm mortified. Number one, the students who are in that class are some of the. That was one of the best groups I've ever had at Dixie. Very, very kind, very. It mortifies me that anyone from that class would participate in such behavior. While my actions may have led to some of these consequences unintentionally, I would also like to assure you that I've spent my entire life dedicated to stopping bullying and being an advocate for victims and things. And there is no way that I would ever intentionally try, particularly a young woman who has been victimized by violence. I used to be on the board of directors for the Deaf Center here in town. I started our Take Back the Night group here on campus. I come from a family where every single person has been a victim of abuse. I guess one of the things I would say, though, as far as linking my assignment and a larger context of her bullying is during those several hours before I took back the assignment, it's possible that one of my students could have gone and tried to track her down, which I had not encouraged them to do. But I would also, I feel quite secure in this, saying that with that particular group of students, my history class, If somebody did contact her and contact her in a malicious way, it couldn't have been more than one student or two students. Those kids in that class are just absolutely wonderful, warm, gentle people. I can't imagine any of them. Anyone can do, is capable of mean acts, I get that, but no, I had no idea at the time. Bill never shared any of that information with me.
I know with the parents, they've kept everything, and they haven't shared that with me, so, I know it was more than a couple of students, but I don't have, all the finite details, but I believe that they will have sued against us, and so eventually we'll probably know names, and if they have their names on their social media, which sometimes.
What would be involved in requesting copies of any of that, with timestamps and things like that?
I really don't want to, I would be hesitant
Okay.
to request it because that would be encouraging them to sue.
Okay.
And I don't think Joel wants that, I know I don't want that, and confidentially, I think what the parents want to do is they're waiting to see if the city attorney, will handle this in a proper manner, and if not, I know they'll go after, I know they're gonna go after Marlo, but then they also are gonna go after the other professors, could be this, they're gonna come after the institution, so, and there'll be protection of professors because, you're part of the institution. So that will be something, but I just wanted full disclosure, I don't have the names, but I just had those conversations, so wanted to be forthright on that. So,
Not that it changes anything, but yeah, when you say that there's one-sided documents here, the whole point of it is that when we study things, I said, here's what we have available. These are the things that are setting the narrative out there. I encourage them to go out and find the other side of the story. I didn't encourage them to contact the student. I would never do that in a million years. And in all actuality, since I knew your hands were tied about public comments on things, as I was hoping to get within the student culture, no, actually, no, everything's okay. And things are fine with things, because there was so many rumors.
Well, with the students' testimony that we had, those that came to HR, they felt, their perception of it was that he didn't tell them to go after them, and that's what they were told. Just in all honesty, that's what they told HR. Their story is a little bit different than yours. They're on document that you started the conversation and were really agitated about it, and were worried about your tenure, and decided that you had disclosed that you lost your wife due to the university and some other things, and they had quite a lot of detail in there about, and that's probably the only difference in your testimony.
It was a very emotional day for me, because my divorce with my first wife is directly related to my relationship with this university. When it came down to the designing the history programs that got assigned to several people, all of whom dropped the ball on it, and then it was the last degree we needed for university status, so they pulled me in and asked me if I would take it over and go to all the meetings and write it, and I did during those several months. My wife felt very ignored and started having an affair with another professor.
So, yeah, let me throw in a question here. So, if I'm hearing correctly, it sounds like, and I want to see what you think about this, Joel, it sounds like the president has concerns that you perhaps went into class and you decided that, this is an issue that students should look into, but that you were encouraging them to try to contact the student or at least look into this issue, and hence by doing that, the student received bullying and something that was kind of in a sense an ongoing investigation kind of became even muddier, more difficult. And your side, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that you came into the classroom and students were already talking about it and you were hoping to maybe get the other side of the story for the students to learn about it. Okay. And how do you feel about that other interpretation? Do you feel that the president, it's possible for him to see it in the way that he does, or do you feel like that's really an impossible interpretation of the situation?
No, I'm hoping now that we've had a chance to sit and to talk and to share my side of it. I hope, and you and I, we've never had a chance to talk all that much or to get to know each other. So,
No, we've got a good relationship.
yeah, but
So he sees it as that something very destructive was done through the class towards the student, and your perspective is that it was unintentional because you were trying to help the students learn, right? So those are kind of the two. I just want to understand the two versions.
Right, and as far as the time frame on it, I mean, immediately when Bill contacted me and we talked, which was just a few hours after class, I immediately acted and retracted. And if you read the email that I sent to my students, it's
The students may not have read the email.
Yeah, and you can imagine if you were getting contacted by even two saying our class has an assignment, to you that represents a group, and even, I mean, just the perception of that would be quite overwhelming to a student, adult or in my minor, I think in that case would be fearful, and so I think 5 hours is definitely enough time for that to happen.
And, I do appreciate you sharing this with us, and, my goal in this is to help you as much as possible. Can I share with you kind of my dilemma, President? My role is to protect the university and protect the students, just like yours. You have that same role and responsibility. And I do appreciate you sharing this. It matches pretty good. But I guess I'm in a situation where, someday I'm going to have to support you for tenure. You're going up this year.
Yeah.
So like in 2 weeks, you have a portfolio due. Okay. So, in a situation where, I'm going to have to sign my endorsement there. And this is unfortunate that you don't have 1 or 2 more years for probation, because I could say, we're going to just kind of, because I don't think you were malicious. I think something bad happened and it affected the student. It was a very poor choice, but I don't think you're a malicious man that sends, students after students. Although it did occur, I don't think he did that maliciously. But, in a couple of months, if you were to go through the tenure process, from what I heard from you today, I have a very hard time supporting that. And I think the trustees, I'm not going to speak for them, but they're in the know too. They're going to question what is it that has changed, because their role and responsibility is to protect the faculty. So my situation is such that, how do I protect you too? I mean, because that would have serious consequences if you go through tenure, and imagine this won't be in your portfolio, and people are saying yes, well, I have additional information. And if I were not to support you, people would wonder why. And although personnel matters need to be confidential, there's a point that I need to be more vocal about what's going on campus, and I'd hate to say, well, he had conduct, I'm becoming a professor against a student, because then that hurts you down the road.
Can I slightly revise that phrase though? I did not have conduct against a student that was negative. I did not tell those students to do something negative. I'm not saying that those students didn't bully her, but I messed up on one little thing. As soon as it was brought to my attention, I immediately rectified it. I have dedicated every single part of my life since I moved here to Utah to this institution. And particularly if this is involving a young woman who, I used to work for Child Protective Services. I'm a victim advocate. I would never in a million years tell students to contact somebody who had been a victim of violence. Never in a million years. Now, if they interpret that way and they did that, that was not my assignment. I understand the bind and the situation on things, but I have a difficult time swallowing the concept of everything else that I've done here at this institution within this community being set aside for me having one mistake and then immediately doing everything I could to rectify it. And I actually, on that note, I guess what I'm not appreciating at the moment is no offense, President Williams. I appreciate that you talked with me this morning. When you and I spoke this morning, you said it was just to talk about a couple of things, and there wasn't any big deal. Now you're talking about potentially my tenure, and because in that message I said that if this is something big, I would like to have an AFT lawyer or something with me here.
And I'm not talking about your tenure. If you remember, I'm telling you what position I'm in, and I'm being fully disclosed to you so you know where I'm at and what I'm thinking. So I'm not here to say that we're revoking your tenure or anything like that, because you don't have tenure or you haven't gone up yet. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that although you didn't have malicious intentions, there were severe consequences to that. And as a president, I have to consider, whether you do that again. And like you said, it was just something you did like that. I have to consider those things. So I'm just giving you a professional courtesy of telling you how I feel, because you need to weigh that in your consideration of what you want to do, and we need to have a conversation, a civil conversation of, what can we do that's best for Joel, what can we do that's best for the university, because there will be something that happens around this to the university. It'll be very public, and you might not feel this way, but part of my role is to protect you as a faculty member too. And so I'm simply having the conversation so you know exactly where I'm coming from.
Thank you for clarifying.
Attacking you or anything like that. This is a serious situation, and with regards to your comment of wiping everything out. Unfortunately, in life, we can make one decision that really changes everything, and this might be one. I'm not saying it is, but it's something that's why I'm sharing you how I feel, a predicament that I would be put in. But I think that one of the reasons to have the conversation is, if you know how rumors were with Barlow, nobody knew anything. So if there's rumors about this and it all gets out there, well, let's say worst case scenario, you needed to find another job. Well, if rumors are out there, people Google you, and I want to control the situation and have a conversation with you, because I don't want, any harm to come to you because people don't understand this situation. I want to keep it between all of us. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I've said it a couple times, but just reaffirm, because if things do go forward and you need to talk with other people, I can absolutely guarantee you with 120% sincerity, I never told those students to contact that girl. I would never do that in a million years.
Contact her about that situation, or get the other side of the story?
To contact her at all.
Okay.
No, I know how devastating something like that would be. I would never, ever, I worked for Child Protective Services for years as an advocate. I would never in a million years tell somebody to contact somebody who was a victim.
What, if I can throw in here, what do you think, Joel, the president should do in this situation? What is your take on it? Do you see his dilemma that he's in? I'm just
No,
curious.
I understand, the dilemma. Yeah, I don't have any recommendations because I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the nature of the case. I don't know, details. So, yeah,
Is this something that we want to think about and discuss, or do we want to start proposing solutions at this meeting?
oh, but when you say solutions at this meeting, I know, what are we talking about with solutions?
Well, if the president is in a difficult situation, I assume that that means that we're looking for a way to deal with them. And so what is the best course of action moving forward in light of how students behaved and the information that he has now, thanks in part to your testimony and things that students shared and, things that the family shared, I assume. So where are we at right now?
Well, where I'm at is where I'm sharing is, I'm kind of in a dilemma because really the story matches. It's gonna be hard for me, let's say you go through tenurance, and I need to go in front of the board of trustees, they're going to ask, how do you know Joel's not going to do this? Or they might not, they might just say, no, this is too egregious against the student. And I guess my thought process in that is, Joel, you would have to be thinking of if that was the case scenario that we were thinking about, what would you want to do prior to that? Would you want to not be tenured and then this be a quiet thing that just goes away and you look for other employment and you and I, or, that's the worst case scenario if I'm saying, from this, and I gotta think about it more, that, I can't support him if he goes up for tenure because this is too egregious of an act against the student. That's kind of where I'm at, is knowing where are we all at.
It sounds like, if I can jump in, it sounds like you're saying that you wanted to hear Joel's perspective because you had gotten information from HR and from Bill, and you wanted to hear his perspective on it, and that you want to make Joel aware that it's a concern in his eventual getting tenure, and so it's just a matter of trying to understand what is the next step, what are some options that are available, in making it, first of all, addressing the issue, and also, making some clarity on that there won't be a problem in the future. I guess that's how I'm seeing it. I don't know.
Well, I'm just pointing that out to Joel so he knows how I'm feeling.
Right.
So come May, he doesn't know how I'm feeling. I'm
Right.
just trying to put it all full
Right.
disclosure
Right. Trying to be pretty
out
open.
there, because I just, and I think that's part of, being transparent and open, and that's why I asked for the faculty advocates to come too. I didn't know that, I was actually fully expecting to have a totally different story then, and we could just be done with it. Although I had pretty strong evidence, but I don't have anything, ill with Joel. I'm truly putting it out there of what we can do to resolve the problem.
Institutions that for 4 years I was had to take back the night. I've run every single march around here out of my own pocket. I've funded multiple students to go through the training at the Dove Center to be victim advocates. I gave a poorly conceptualized assignment that I almost immediately revoked. That I'll take full responsibility for. I did it in real time. But of stating that I have committed something malicious against a student, I have not done that. Because if the malicious act was those students contacting her, I never said to contact her. I never would. I can guarantee that. I look at anything with my past and look at copies of my CV. Everything is, every other job I've had has involved aspects of working as a victim advocate. I can guarantee if I would need to talk to the Board of Trustees to tell them my background, explain the context, I'm more than happy with that. But the idea that I am somebody you need to be concerned with who is going to go around getting students go around and hurt other students is not me.
If Bill hadn't called you that evening, you would have left the assignment up? The assignment would have continued?
By that time, I had thought through most of it. I probably by the end of the evening, I probably would have canceled the assignment, even if Bill had not called. I had been having second thoughts, and once I left, I was like, particularly because the stuff that was on the midterm exam was a period we just studied. It was my specialty, and me being like, well, I want to see if I actually learned that information. So
it wasn't necessarily, this assignment was inappropriate for some reason?
well, no, it was back in March. I can't go through and detail every step of my thought process along it that way. I had already been having. If you talk with Bill Christensen about that with our conversation, I think I communicated to him. I was like, yeah, okay. I was sort of thinking about that it was a bad idea anyway. And he was like, yeah, and then he explained through. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that assignment was a really bad idea. He's like, yep. As soon as he brought it to my attention, I immediately did something about it.
I don't know, I mean, is there someplace where we need to take this next? Is this something where Nancy and I can maybe chat with Joel? I mean, I don't know.
I think maybe after we digest it, we can leave and you can talk and then we can meet next week or sometime.
Okay.
But, my disclosure, my feelings is just so that we can, I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt Joe. And I just wanted him to know how I felt in full disclosure and my position of where I'm at and why I'm there. And I'll say it again, I don't think you're malicious, and that I do think that, this did cause students to go after someone, and not that you read the assignment. They feel like you did, but, I think that you can talk with your advocates, and maybe I would like all of us to keep it under wraps, because as soon as one thing leaks, rumors go, and I'm truly thinking of Joel, because once something leaks, then it's out there, and then I have to address it, because then it's a university issue, and I'd rather not. That's my whole plan on talking and putting it out there, so you know where I'm at.
When does Marlo's case go to court?
They had a pleadings hearing, and then I think the first date was like September 19th. So it's coming up
It is
soon.
gonna all come out.
It will come out, yeah. I mean, it will, everything will come out. And, the parents, the suit's there, but it's kind of in, not moving on it, or we're not moving on it because we've reached out and so, yeah, that will eventually come. I don't know what Barlow's attorney is advising him to do. It looks like they're, from the newspaper, they're finding process and not whether or not he did it. That's what I get from the paper, so, but there will be, things came out, and if they stick to the case, it should, things like this shouldn't come out on this. But, the parents, we don't know what the parents are going to do. So maybe we'll leave and then you guys can talk to maybe Monday or so, but, the situation I'm in is if it goes public and people go crazy, I mean, I have to address it in the version. I don't really want it to go public for Joel's sake and for the university, being so much on that side of things.
Some of the board of trustees are already aware of this, so.
All of them are. It was an executive session.
Okay.
We talked personnel, it's because it was tied there. And then all information that I had to that date, I had to share. And it's not just Joel, there's others. So, I mean, it's out there. And, so there's other situations that we any questions?
Just closing comment, all of the things put aside, as a human being, I'm mortified that my students did that and that I unintentionally had anything to do with that. But the number of hours I've sat with victims, and yeah, it's a cause I've actually dedicated my entire life to, and it horrifies me that I've been part of being a perpetrator unintentionally.